Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the 6th Annual National Agenda Program, sponsored by UD's Center for Political Communication, the Office of the Provost, the College of Arts and Sciences, and the William P. Frank Foundation. I'm Dr. Lindsay Hoffman. I'm Director of the National Agenda Program and Associate Director of the Center for Political Communication. This year, we're delving into the road to the presidency. We've had a lot of people come and talk to us about different aspects of the presidential election. As you know, last night we saw the vice presidential debate. We're in full swing of the presidential election year. We've already heard from two journalists, Sam Sanders and Domenico Montanaro of NPR, journalists who've been following the campaign trail. Their entertaining and informative podcast, NPR Politics, has moved into the top 3 politics podcasts since they came here and talked. We've also spoken with an up-and-coming comedic writer, Ashley Black, from Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, on everything from covering the conventions to the long history of crude humor in political comedy. Her recent piece on the first presidential debate has nearly 450,000 viewers this week, and I'm beginning to think that we might have a UD National Agenda bump. You can view both of those conversations, as well as our previous year's conversations, anytime on YouTube at udel.edu/nationalagenda. Coming up, we'll talk with a former governor, a political strategist, and feature the Delaware debates to really explore the issues in this year's election at both the national and state levels. You can find the full schedule at udel.edu/nationalagenda. And if you appreciate these events, please sign up for our email list out in the foyer of Mitchell Hall to hear about more events like this. Tonight's event is free and open to the public, like all National Agenda events, to create a space for thoughtful and critical dialogue. I encourage audience participation, both here in Mitchell Hall and on social media. Just tweet at the account at UdelAgenda to join the discussion, or tag your tweet with hashtag UdelAgenda. Your tweet could make it into our conversation tonight. We are also live streaming at sites.udel.edu/udlive if your friends or family were unable to make it. And I'd like to remind our audience here that civil and respectful dialogue is expected because 2016 is a unique election. Emotions are high, and nearly half of Americans have reported arguing with a friend, family, or coworker about this election. As I keep telling my students, it's unprecedented in many ways. So be candid, but also be courteous of others' views. Tonight, I'm happy to introduce our guest, who is a columnist and editor-at-large for Salon, and his work has been published in the New York Times, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and many other publications. Dee Watkins holds a master's in education from Johns Hopkins University and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Baltimore. He's a college professor at the University of Baltimore and founder of the Be More Writers Project. Watkins has been the recipient of numerous awards, including Ford's Men of Courage and a BME fellowship. Watkins is from and lives in East Baltimore. He's the author of The Cook-Up, a crack rock memoir, and The Beast Side, Living and Dying While Black in America. Both books have been well received, and in the July issue of O, Oprah Winfrey's magazine, Watkins' memoir, The Cook-Up, actually made the list of the best books of the summer. David Simon, who you might know as the creator of The Wire, the popular television series, has said that Dee Watkins has arrived. Don't miss getting a signed copy for yourself in the foyer before you leave, and please join me in giving a warm Blue Hen welcome to Dee Watkins.
Good evening. How you guys doing tonight? Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. I'm so happy to be here. You have such a beautiful campus and amazing professors. I had the luxury of going to some of the classes and having dinner with some students, and it was great. I'm honored. I believe in you guys. I know this is about the road to the presidency, and we should be talking about Hillary and the Donald and Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. But just being here for this brief amount of time, I have more faith in you and your ideas than I have after watching a couple of segments on CNN. Because it's really, really, really about you guys and about what you do and how you use your talents and your power to change some of these systems that exist. I want to touch on a few things tonight. And, I'll briefly state them so we can make sure we're on the same page. One, Donald Trump is not here for working class people. I don't know if anyone in the audience thinks that, but you should probably get it out of your head. Number two, don't mix up contempt for Trump as love for Hillary Clinton. Just because a person doesn't like Trump, it doesn't mean they have like a I'm with her hoodie on. It's not, a lot of people aren't with her. And then number three, as I briefly just stated, I care about you. The great students at the university, not just Delaware, but all over the country, the young scholars in high school, the underground artists, the people. It's about us. We're the ones that's going to change the narrative. We're the ones that I would like to focus on. We're the ones that's really going to truly make a difference. So let's skim through some of this Donald Trump stuff really quick. He says that, and I want to keep in theme with the event for tonight. He says that he's for the people. He's for the working people. He's for police officers. He's for the military. All of these different things. All of these different things. A lot of them funded with federal money, but he doesn't pay taxes. How can you brag and say that you care about all of these different people who benefit from the taxes that we all pay? Raise your hand if you have a job in here. Raise your hand if you have a job. Keep it up if you pay taxes. So anybody, that would take that serious is, I don't want to take a shot at anybody for, but he doesn't pay taxes. So it immediately takes him out of the conversation. I had the luxury the other day meeting with Baltimore City's new police commissioner. He said that he feels like the police officers are out of touch. He reads my articles and he understands that, people who come from where I come from, we don't have a relationship with police officers. So he said, with all due respect, can I pick your brain because I want to be better? So I went to his office and, and we had a good little conversation, and he told me some things that he wanted to do, and he'd asked me if he could rely on me to maybe talk to some of his police officers about systemic racism, about white supremacy, about where some of these social ills come from so they can have a better understanding of the communities where they police. And I say, yeah, for a fee, it's no problem. And I'm going to do it because I really care. But at the end of the conversation, he said, Trump came to town the other day. And I said, yeah, the city paper asked me, could I cover that? And I just felt like it's not worth my time. This wasn't in a bio, but I do, sometimes I do stuff on MSNBC. Sometimes I do stuff on CNN. Sometimes Fox News calls, but I just don't go because I really care about my time. I don't want to debate with a person for the sake of debating. Everything I do has to lead to something productive and positive, not just going back and forth with like Hannity. So this is not, I can do better stuff like teach my nieces and nephews how to finger paint and all that. So he said Trump came to town the other day, and it's a tradition, not just in Baltimore, but all over the country for presidential candidates or the president to take pictures with the cops who are protecting them at the event. The local cops who are backstage, the local cops who are out front. They say, look, if any of you guys want to take a picture with the candidate, they set aside time for that. So Trump comes to Baltimore, he addresses the troops, he walks backstage, and the liaison who connects the security team for Trump with the police department said, hey, There's a couple of supporters here, some cops. You know, you're the candidate for police officers. They just want to take a couple of pictures, just like 3 of them. No, I'm not doing pictures today, bye. That was his response. That was his response. The candidate for police officers doesn't even think enough to take pictures with them. So, you know, beyond that, for obvious reasons, why I would never support Donald Trump is, well, you know, mainly because I'm black, and I watch the news, and I see that, you know, he just started allowing black people to come to his rallies like 2 days ago, when it became politically popular. You know, he went to a black church, and some crazy person actually let him kiss their baby. You know, which is beyond me. You know, it's beyond me. But I wouldn't support him. And the other day I had a great opportunity to interview one of the contestants from his television show, The Apprentice. You guys see that? Anybody see The Apprentice? It's been canceled for a long time. Yeah, you have to be, you know, you have to remember the 90s to be able to reference that show. But it was a show where they collected business people from all over the country to compete at a slot of being his apprentice, a person who he would train in business, a person who he would teach how to lose $900 million in a year and still survive. You know, people were signing up, and in the first season, it was really, really popular. The show went viral, and one of the contestants, a guy named Kwame Jackson from North Carolina, black dude, went to Harvard Business School, had a job at Goldman Sachs. He was selected to be on that show. And he got a chance to get on there, and he did really well, and he made it all the way to the end. And I asked him, I said, why didn't you win? And he said, well, I was more qualified than the guy who beat me, and I had more skills, but for some reason I lost. And then we got into that conversation about race. And I said, well, was Trump a racist back then, or is this like a new thing? And he said, no, he's always been the same. I said, well, what about these things that he says on camera? Is it just for the cameras, or is he really like that? And he said, no, that's the guy I know. Person who proudly disrespects women, a person who sees a talented black person and looks at them like they're a unicorn, a person who doesn't have respect for people who aren't at least a millionaire. You can't be a billionaire. You know, it's not all the billionaires, but if you're not at least a millionaire, then you can't sit at his table. So the fact that he's the champion for blue collar people is just, you know, it's beyond me. I'll never understand it. It's an algorithm I can't figure out. It's an equation I don't get it. I don't understand how a person whose manicure budget probably costs more than your mortgage captured the heart of so many working class people. It's beyond me. And then we have Hillary Clinton. I want to like Hillary so, she's like my ex. I want to like her so bad. I want to, like, you know, I'd switch my TV different angles. I listen. I pray. You know, I want to like Hillary, but I was born in the 80s and learned and raised in the 90s, around the time of the crime bill of 1994. And I know she wasn't president, you know, of the crime bill, so that, you know, I would never try to hold her accountable for some of the things that Bill Clinton done. But she promoted that crime bill like a champ. And she didn't back down on that crime bill until it became politically unpopular. I grew up in a drug family, a family that sold drugs. Some had other opportunities and did the wrong thing. Some didn't. When you make comments and when you talk about super predators, it's disrespectful to people who come from neighborhoods like where I come from, because, you know, there's just some bad people in every inch of this nation, on this university. There's bad people everywhere, but you can't just generalize a whole segment of oppressed people and call them super predators. That's crazy. Some of the dudes I knew who started selling drugs were living in Baltimore in the 90s, not old enough to work, had brothers and sisters that needed to eat, and they didn't even have running water in their homes. So you're not talking about the social ills that's created in this reality. You're not talking about how these drugs and guns are actually making it into the neighborhoods, but you blaming the victims. You blaming children. Children that have no guidance are predators. Just think about that. Not a regular predator, but a super one. That's like an extra set of teeth. You're responsible for this, so you have a role in this, and you're blaming children for things that they can't even control. I don't know, I didn't even understand all of these different types of realities until I was fortunate enough to make it out of my neighborhood. So why should I be guilty or victimized? Why are you blaming me for being poor? Why are you blaming me for being in a messed up spot? And why would you hold on to that until a couple of rich black people with money said, hey, hello, Hill, Bill, whoever this is? You can't keep calling them super predators. They don't like that. If you want them to come out to the polls, you gotta retract that. You gotta say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't right. Maybe I was doing, what I thought I had to do at that time. And then you come out and you address it. That's not cool. You can't yell and scream Black Lives Matter because it's cool. You can't act like you're clinging to these people or these different groups because it's cool. When it's cool to support the LGBTQ community, she'll support. When it wasn't cool, she didn't support. I don't like that. Pick a stance and stand on it. If you love these people, then love them. If you don't, then don't. But whatever you do, you got to make a decision. You can't flip-flop every time the camera or the mood changes. You can't do that. These are people. My whole family, the bulk of my family members and a lot of my friends are gone because of the crime bill. People who committed nonviolent crimes are doing 20, 30, 40, 50 years in jail. If they was white, they probably would have went to rehab, learned the skill, came home with a skill, started a family, and called the carnival and hopped on a cruise ship. Eating the nasty food in the cruise ship buffet, living. But no, they in jail. Making products while people like Trump are shipping the real jobs to other countries and saying he's going to make America great. So I can only speak from a perspective of a black person because these are the only shoes that I had a chance to walk in. But I'm not really excited about either one of these candidates. And then Gary Johnson doesn't know anything about anything outside of America. He can't even name a leader he don't even know what's going on in Canada. If you want to be president of the United States, you got to have some respect for the people that support you. Have enough respect for the people who fund your campaign to do a Google search or take a commercial break. It's crazy, So, and I've met Jill Stein. I've been to events with Jill Stein. She's a beautiful person. She's amazing, super intelligent, but she's not going to win. So it doesn't look really, really bright from my perspective, but at the same time, it is bright. For those of you who don't know what else I do, I am a writer, I am a journalist, I am a college professor. Right now, I'm consulting Jada Pinkett and Will Smith on a film. She's making her directorial debut in Baltimore, so I wear a lot of hats. But my most important job is a community activist. I create content that gets young people excited about reading. I write books that non-readers in oppressed areas like East Baltimore finish in like 2 or 3 days. I write those books, I raise that money, and I get into those schools, and that's the work that I do. I work hard to create critical thinkers. Because if you can think critically and you can make your own decision and not live off of somebody else's opinions or decisions, but actually think and creatively construct your own, then you'll make better decisions and the world will be a better place. It's, reading and the love for writing is something that has been lost in our country for a while, but it's coming back, and I work really hard at that. I know another person who does something similar, but it's financial literacy. She's teaching people what to do with their money when they get it so that they can actually, build wealth, buy some of these properties, build the neighborhood up, I know someone else that does it with food. I don't know how to go to the market. Like when I go, somebody just told me Whole Foods was bad for you. I was like, really? Whole Foods isn't even safe. Apples cost like $6. And they was telling me I got to eat air compressed chickens. I'm like, what is that? I know a family who they focus on nutrition and they teach young people from oppressed areas how to survive in the food desert. How do you eat healthy in a neighborhood that has nothing but fast food joints and carry out stuff? So it's like we're all making a difference on the ground. And if Hillary wins, we're going to still do that work because we're not funded by the government. We're not funded by it. They don't write us checks. We raise our own money, we make our own money, and we reinvest. If Donald Trump wins, it's not going to hurt us because we're still in the same rut doing the same work. That's why I said, when it comes to the election and the road to the presidency, the people who I look to for results, the people who I look at to be inspired by are students like you who took time out of your night to come to this event to have this conversation. You're going to make the difference. It's about you. Somebody in this audience right now is seeing Donald Trump or Pence get on the TV and lie 176 times in a row, and you're going to be inspired to run. Not because you can lie 180 times in a row, but because you feel like there's a problem and you'll be able to be a part of being the change that you want to see. Somebody's here is going to be an ethical business owner who's not running around trying to duck and dodge taxes. You're going to pay them and you're going to use your resources to reinvest and build our country the right way. Not just talk about it, not say make America great because it sounds good, but really, really, really work to make America be the best country it can be. And that's what I care about. So if I can help you or if I can be a part of your movement or what you're doing, then we moving forward. All of that stuff these other people doing on MSNBC and CNN, these people are playing. They playing. The first time I wrote a race segment for MSNBC, they came back with like, had to be like 16 rounds of edits. Why? Because there's too much truth in it. I'd go with the lesser of two evils. I said, you know what? Even my watered down piece is more relevant than whatever your best writer or producer can come up with. So I'm gonna let you win that round. But I gotta make sure this is said, that is said, and this is said, and that's how we move forward. So in closing, I would say, please go out and vote. But think about what you can do. What can you do as a person to make our country better? Thank you. Did I just come here? Oh. Okay. I'll meet you right here.
It's not a long journey. Thank you so much. It's so refreshing to hear personal perspectives, personal narratives, personal history. I think our students are really struggling in this election to find their own voices. And I will mention that as part of this series, we're trying to be as nonpartisan as possible. We're bringing in lots of different voices, and our next speaker is actually a pro-Trump supporter in Governor Bob Ehrlich, so it'll be very interesting to hear his perspective, because clearly, if I can say, this was a little anti-Trump, maybe?
just a bit.
Okay.
It's mainly the hair. I can't get past the hair.
So, but anyway, it's refreshing, I think, for our students to hear real honesty and real dialogue. So I have some questions from our students. First of all, I'll put up the two, I have the two covers of your books, which are available outside. These were also very personal narratives. The B-side was a collection of essays that you wrote about your perceptions of particularly what it's like to be Black in America in 2014, 15, and 16. The Cook-Up is a memoir. It's actually subtitled a crack rock memoir. You grew up in a neighborhood and in a family where selling drugs was the norm. How did you get here?
I'm blessed, you know. I'm lucky, and I don't take anything for granted. I lost a lot of good friends, close friends. I lost my brother, who was my everything, and you know, I'm dedicated to spending the rest of my life to make sure I'm making those people proud. Like, I work hard for their legacies and what they've been through, and to try my best to effectively tell our stories in the best way I can. I think a lot of times when people see this, you know, this street stuff, they forget about the humanity that exists within these neighborhoods. There's a dense social fabric and love. There's a lot of love in these places, and I want to do the best job that I can do as a person to promote that love.
Well, so you've spoken with some of our students today, and I hope you've had a good time talking with our University of Delaware students. A lot of them have questions about what you would do if you could talk to a politician. So how does the conversation need to change so that poverty among inner city communities and racial tensions can become a unifying issue instead of a divisive one? This comes from John in National Agenda class.
So, John, I would sit him down and I would say, do you care about everybody? You care about everyone in this country. Do you care? Do you really care? And if they say yes, like they would because they're politicians, say, okay, I want you to come to East Baltimore. I want you to come to Latrobe Housing Projects, and I want you to stay here for a week. Not a month, not 2 weeks, just a week. Stay here a week. Stay here a week. And then we'll go from there. Because you'll get an understanding of the many Americas that exist in America. It's not just beautiful campuses. It's not just picket fences. It's not just, it's always a segment, the hard-working white man. Like it's always like a segment, like when they, the hard-working blue collar, it's not just those guys, and it's not just the latte and the cocktail people in Manhattan. Like, there's so many different Americas, and if you love this country, you'll care about all of them. You wouldn't just care about what's popular.
You've talked today about having to go through culture shock in so many ways, and going to a predominantly white institution, coming to University of Delaware, a predominantly white institution, coming from a background like you have. What is your recommendations for students who want to understand these different types of Americans, these different Americas that you're talking about?
If you're in a city, live in a city. If you're on campus, leave campus. Talk to some different people who are having some different experiences. Step outside of your comfort zone. It's easy. It's not really that difficult. One of the universities I teach at, Johns Hopkins University, I found out that they tell students to stay within a certain 2 to 3 block radius around campus. And there's so many beautiful things in the city, and you're actually cheating them. I think we're taught that we're so different. We're so different. The California guy can't relate to the New York guy. The Texas woman can't relate to the woman in Delaware. It's like, okay, cool, we do have some differences, but at the core, there's a set of universal truths that connect us all. These are the things we need to identify and use them to bring us closer together if we are really, really, really serious about enhancing social relations. And it's very, very simple. It's just, if somebody's doing something that's weird or not or not what you're used to, ask him or her about it. Have a conversation. You'll be surprised. You might be inspired. It might even change the way you live your life.
So you're relatively active on Twitter. I have a tweet here from August. I'm sorry, it's behind you. But you pointed out that if the U.S. had the borders that Donald Trump preaches about, America wouldn't exist. And you say melting pot, right? Nation of immigrants, right? How do you think Donald Trump's and Hillary Clinton's rhetoric, this comes from Phoebe, how do you believe the conversations of race in this country are being affected by the discourse provided by the Clinton and Trump campaigns? And we've heard discussions about race in both the presidential and vice presidential debate. How are those conversations at that level impacting what Americans understand about race in this country?
I think if you love people, then you'll be uninspired. But if you're like some type of white supremacist, then you'll be inspired. It's just a matter of perspective. I don't think, when I hear the sound bites, the New York Times did a collection of sound bites from a Trump rally. People were saying some of the most disgusting things. Like, you would think this was like 1902. It's crazy. So I know for me, a person who, I feel like I have a great American story. And I feel like I care about this country more than the people who wear flags on their t-shirts and flags on their jeans and put 2 flags in their pockets, because I actually challenge and work hard at challenging our country to be a better place for everybody. So, I think, obviously Hillary's on the left to these issues. So, the people who come to a Hillary campaign aren't going to bash a person based on race. And if they do bash somebody, they might use logic. At the Trump campaigns, these things aren't really happening. The most beautiful thing of the year was the Bernie Sanders. His run was inspiring. It was a bunch of people who want to change, but want to change in a smart way, not change in a dumb way. Change in a dumb way is saying, yo, we want change for the sake of having change, so let's get change. No, you got to have strategy and a plan. You got to have real goals and real ideas to actually put our country where it could be and where it needs to be. So again, all of these things that I say are solely based on my own social context and where I come from. So if I grew up in a family full of white supremacists, then like maybe a Trump rally might be a great place to spend a Friday night. If that's where I come from, if that's all I know. But if I'm a person who comes from where I come from, then it's not the best place to spend a Friday night.
I think one of the things you said earlier today that I really appreciated was you had a term for Bernie Sanders and how he relates to millennials, like in this audience.
Yeah, I said Bernie is the world's first elderly millennial. He's fun to watch. He's great, and he gets it. The thing what I respect about Bernie the most is if he's challenged on an issue and he feels like you were right, and he would listen to you and he would acknowledge that. And that's the kind of temperament, that's the kind of mindset. This is the kind of mentality you need to move forward. Not, it's my way. My way's the only way. I'm the only one that can fix everything. I can't tell you how. I can just tell you that I'm the only one that can do it.
I'd like to come back to the debates for a moment, just because so many of our students, I keep mentioning how it's not since 2008 that I've seen so many of our students be so interested in the campaigns and in the election, and we've seen it in terms of the numbers of viewers. The first presidential debate had the most viewers since 1980 debate between Reagan and Carter. And we've also seen both the first presidential and the vice presidential debate bring up issues of implicit bias and systemic racism. Was that surprising to you? And do you feel that there's a productive conversation happening among these candidates about issues that affect African Americans?
I think it's popular. I'll never give a politician credit for talking about something that's popular. Like if the media is reporting it, if there's a story, if people are reacting to it and they talk about it, it's what they're supposed to do. They're politicians. I'm only interested in solutions. So, obviously Pence doesn't have solutions about anything. And I want to like Tim Kaine. I really want to like Tim Kaine. I want to say, hey, we have one of the guys' council on poker night, we have an extra seat. Tim, come on over. But no, to answer the question, no. I'm not shocked. If you cut on any of the major news stations, probably even your local news, you're gonna hear about some unarmed person being shot. So, of course they'll put it in the conversation because people are reporting it.
In my class, we call this agenda setting, that oftentimes people in the White House and in political office will set the agenda for media, who then set the agenda for voters. But in the course of a campaign, these two candidates are very, very powerful in terms of how they can dictate the discourse of the day from day to day. I mean, it's interesting to think about a year ago today, what was the big issue of the day? Donald Trump was kind of a little bit of a joke on the campaign trail. Martin O'Malley was a candidate for Democrat. Ted Cruz and Marco
I would argue a year ago today, Martin O'Malley was a bigger joke than Donald Trump.
Coming from Baltimore, yes.
I will argue that. He had in Iowa, one person showed up, and the guy was undecided.
Oh, the primaries. The primaries and the caucuses. So American, so unique. Let's move on to the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm showing another tweet from you where it says, police are demonizing Black Lives Matter as they pulled the trigger. Demonize the cops out here killing innocent black people. The shooter worked alone. This is in response to the shooting in
Dallas.
Dallas, thank you. And you had this kind of profound, simple, what I've found that's so fascinating about your writing and what you say is it's just these sort of simple, hey, the solution is simple, stop killing innocent black people. So what is your relationship with the Black Lives Matter movement, and how have you been engaged with these discussions about police shootings?
I know a lot of people who represent Black Lives Matter. I actually don't. I don't work for that organization. I respect them immensely, especially the way they changed the conversation. The women who started it they're amazing people. Good friends with Netta and D-Ray McKesson, and it's a movement. It's a movement of now. I said this once. I'll say it again. I don't wake up in the morning with the dreams of changing the whole world. I wake up with the dream of like being a voice or inspiration or helping just a couple of people, and hoping that those people do the same thing for somebody else. So I can't, lead a Black Lives Matter rally, a march from here to DC, but somebody who's in between jobs might need to borrow $20. I can get it to them. In the midst of me giving them that, in the exchange of me giving them that $20, I might tell them something that can help them never be in a position to need $20 again. Maybe they can do the same thing for somebody else. Maybe somebody coming home from jail might need a job that actually pays a real wage. Maybe I was able to use my platform as a writer and my connections to different companies who want me to write about them to get a couple of people a shot who normally wouldn't get a shot. I work with people. I don't work with, I'm not into stats. I'm not into popularity contests or any of those things. And I'm also not against anybody that's into that. But I know I just do my job. So I think I champion them for the way they changed the conversation. But at the same time, I feel like I like to win. And I'm most effective when I'm working with people, small groups, one-on-one basis, how to tie a tie, how to write a resume that can actually get you employed, job training, etiquette, interview etiquette, simple skills that I didn't have coming up. I didn't get my first real job, because right after I left the streets, I went into business for myself, and I never actually filled out an application until I was an adjunct. So these are things that I never picked up because, so many people apply for so many positions, and a lot of them just didn't get them for whatever reasons, but it just wasn't a culture that I was fully raised in. It just wasn't like a thing for me. So I try my best to do that. And, if that means Black Lives Matter, then cool. But, I don't really say, I don't really shout Black Lives Matter because I feel like, this is how I feel. If I got to tell you that Black Lives Matter in 2016, then you're never going to know they matter. It's 2016. I shouldn't have to tell you that. It's like saying cereal needs milk. Cereal needs milk. It's 2016. Of course it needs milk.
It always needed milk. Well, we heard from class today, and a few weeks ago we heard from Ashley Black, who's a writer on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And by the way, I'm going to plug just quickly, DeRay McKesson and Netta Elzy were here just about a year ago on this stage, and that video is available at udel.edu/national agenda. Apologies for the plug.
Oh, that's all good. They're great people.
So they talked a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement. I think Justin has a really interesting question here. He says, we've had 8 years of a black president, yet it seems like racism has escalated in many ways in these 8 years. Perhaps is it in part a reaction to a black man in power? Many people thought Obama's presidency would have the opposite effect. If a black president didn't do that, what's the best step that can be taken in this country to ease race relations? It's a big question.
Yeah, I don't think one president or the election of one president will erase racism or enhance race relations. A lot of people were upset when Obama won, you know, as if he couldn't do a better job than McCain, who talked about going to war with Spain, as if they're not in NATO. But but that's another option. But that's another conversation. But this top-down stuff doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Like, you can have 60 black presidents. You know, if there's no economic power in black communities, you'll get the same, it'll be the same thing over and over again. This is America. He or she who makes the money makes the rules. So when you think about, when you listen to these politicians talk and when you go to these events, I hope you challenge these people, but when you listen to them, you know, don't get me wrong, some of these policies, they do great things to help people in all types of situations, and we need to challenge them on that. But the power lies in what you do as an individual. Justin, what are you doing to enhance social relations? Is the biggest change you'll see in the world. It's the biggest change you can ever see in the world is what you are doing to enhance social relations. Because some of these people don't care, and the ones who don't care don't get it. And some of the ones that get it, you know, they don't know what they're doing, so.
We talked a little bit about this in class today, but, and you mentioned that you're an optimist, and Aaron asks, you know, racism is so clearly still alive and well. Do you foresee racism ever ending in this country? And how long might that take?
100 years maybe, you know. It's, you know, it's not, you know, a lot of times we think that we can solve problems that existed for hundreds of years in a day. It doesn't work like that. If you really, really care and you really want to fight and try to combat these issues, then you had to realize that you might not live long enough to see the results of your work, but that doesn't make you exempt from doing the work. I know I might not see the changes I want to see. While, you know, I want to see young people clinging to books the same way they do when they holding their phones. You know, I want to see young people walking around up and down the street like this. Doesn't have to be my book, can be any book, but I want to see them walking up and down the street like this. That's what I want to see. And I know I might not live long enough to see that, but that doesn't make me exempt from doing the work. There's no simple recipe to cure racism. You know, if it was, then somebody would be selling it right now. It takes time, because a lot of us, we're victims of society and tradition and our own culture. The bigotry and the ignorance that has been passed down from our own family members. We're the product of that. And sometimes it's hard to get past that. So it's not, you know, it's not a simple journey. Doesn't mean you're not supposed to be out here showing love and trying to fight it, because you're just a piece of that generation that's building that foundation. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time.
Switching gears a little bit, I was really surprised in my classroom early in the semester to discover that Colin Kaepernick's refusal to stand during the national anthem caused such a stir. And I've been telling my students that in, you know, all the years I've been teaching about media and politics, this is the first time that I had a conversation in my classroom where students were visibly upset and engaging in name calling. And Nick had a similar question. What are your thoughts on the recent stance that these players have taken around the national anthem? Do you think they're succeeding in their mission? Is this something that they should or should not be doing? What does it mean? Why are they doing this?
So people give me a lot of stuff about this, but I'll say it again anyway. I don't expect athletes or public figures to be role models. Doesn't matter if they make millions of dollars. It doesn't matter if they have the public eye. Doesn't matter if they have a voice bigger than a regular person. I just don't. If you want to take a stand for something, then that's cool. If you don't, I'm not going to criticize you or ridicule you because it's not, I don't pay your bills. I don't know what your beliefs are. I'm just, and then a lot of times, do you ever hear Charles Barkley talk about issues on race? It's the dumbest thing in the world. Like, who gave him the microphone? You know what I mean? My thing is resources. What Kaepernick also did was he donated $1 million to some organizations to try to fight change. He reached out to people on the ground to talk to them about, advice, to get advice on what he was actually doing. That's the difference, So I think that any person who would criticize him is a person who doesn't love this country. Aren't we about freedom? Don't we have the right to protest? Right? Aren't these some of the fundamentals that this nation was supposed to be built on? So if a guy doesn't want to stand up for a flag, shouldn't have to. Now, the people who know the history of the song will probably understand him more, but most people probably don't. Because a lot of us aren't reading. 28 million illiterate people in this country. So many people in this country are living off of the thoughts and ideas of other people because they don't have the brain power to create their own because they're not challenging and bettering themselves and making themselves smarter. So all of these things get cooked together and we have this mess.
Can you give us a little background? You talked earlier about the history of the Star-Spangled Banner that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of.
Yeah, so Francis Scott Key, when you go to a sporting event, you hear the first stanza. It's actually a poem with 4 stanzas. And in the third stanza, there's a line that says, "No hireling or slave should be free from the gloom of the grave." And he wrote that song because a lot of black people were escaping the fight with the British because they promised freedom if they won the war. So those encaptured slaves wanted to be free, so they switched sides. He thought they were traitors, and I guess you can call that the first rap beef, the first diss. He thought they was traitors, and he dissed them in the anthem. And even in the South, Andrew Jackson, he caught wind of this, and he rounded up a lot of slaves, and he told them, he said, "Look, if y'all protect Louisiana, y'all won't have to be slaves after the war, if we win." So they protected Louisiana, those brave men protected Louisiana, and then Andrew Jackson reneged on the deal. He went on to be president, and he sent them back into servitude. So that's a part of this country's history and legacy as well. But when people are talking about standing up for the flag, they don't think about that. And then when you look at some of the things that are going on today, when you look at drug use and abuse and drug addiction, when you look at these police shootings, when you look at who's doing the same crimes but who's going to jail for it, it's almost like there's 2 different court systems. It's almost like we have 2 different court systems. When Martin O'Malley was the mayor of Baltimore, it was so easy to go to jail. As a black person, all you had to do was jaywalk, open container, ride a bike on the sidewalk. Simple things. The NAACP and the ACLU sued him for like 700,000 illegal arrests in 1 year because he was incentivizing police officers to just lock people up, to make it look like they were tough on crime. But they weren't going in the white neighborhoods and doing that. They were only doing that in black neighborhoods. So what does that do? All of these people, they get locked up and they come home and they fill out job applications and they ask you, have you ever been arrested before? And you got to check that box. You're creating a generation of people who can't find gainful employment based on technicalities and political popularity. It's a game to you, but these are real lives that you're messing up. And then, when you talk to people who were police officers at that time, they was loving it because they were making money. Think about it. This is why, this is how you create these systems that allow these stupid things to survive. So you get 2 types of cops, right? You got cop A. He's a detective. He investigates murderers. He puts murderers in jail. right? And then you got the beat cop. He's going to be cop B. So cop A is, he gets a case. It's a shooting. He walks, he works the streets. He snatches people up. He interviews them. He talks to them. He talks to family members. He plays the neighborhood. He does his homework. There's no overtime for working a murder. There's no bonuses. There's nothing pretty about working a murder. But 3 or 4 months might go by. He'll solve a murder. He's taking a killer. He's taking a murderer off of the streets. He's doing a good job. Then you got cop B. He's just going around arresting everybody in sight. So after he locks you up, he got to take you back to the precinct and process you. So he's getting overtime for that. Then he's locking up a lot of people, so he's the popular guy around the precinct. Then after you get released and you got to come back and go to court, he gets a court fee for everybody that he locked up. So he's getting paid for that. So now his little $30,000 job is turning into like a $60,000, $70,000 job now because he's going to court and he's locking all of these people up. So it's almost like incentivizing mass incarceration. Then when it's time to get promotions out, we're going to give it to cop B because you locked up one murderer, but he locked up 15,000 jaywalkers. You see what I mean? So you're almost promoting pettiness and ignorance, and you're creating a system. Martin O'Malley spearheaded that in Baltimore, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many problems now, because of his poor leadership. For him doing what's politically popular, not caring about people, not really caring about their reality, and allowing it to happen. And they have the nerve to want to run to be president. You want to be president. Crazy.
What needs to happen systemically in police departments for that narrative to change, for the people who are doing good work to be rewarded and the people who are simply adding arrests to their list to not simply be rewarded monetarily for that reason? What needs to change in the police system?
Stop rewarding meaningless arrests. Simple, just stop it. Stop it. The big issue is there's a high percentage of police officers in Baltimore City that actually don't live in Baltimore. They come from Pennsylvania. They have no idea or no, context. They're being thrust into a culture they don't understand with a license to kill. They're being trained up in a tradition that allows them to further dehumanize African Americans. And they get to call it work. I say you need to create a bigger initiative to hire within a city. And if you want to work in Baltimore City as a police officer, then you need to live in Baltimore City. Easy. If you want to be a police officer in Baltimore City, if you want to eat off of our tax base, you should live there. Same with teachers. Meet some people. Go to some events. Work hard to make the community better, just like the people who live there work hard to make the community better. Because you're a part of that community. You're eating off of it. You're spending time there. So live there. I would even go to the point and say if teachers and cops wanted to, I'm just going to put them in, I'm going to group them. Teachers and cops, if you want to work in the Baltimore City public school system, or if you want to be a Baltimore City police officer, give them a discount on buying a house, take away closing costs or something, But set it up so they can buy a home in the city. And you'll see instant change. Because if you know a kid like Dante and his grandmother, Miss Dorothy, you're not going to blow Dante's head off. Because when you see him, you know him, and you know he wouldn't have a gun, and you know he wouldn't harm you. He might be a knucklehead, he might start some trouble, but he's not going to hurt you, and you don't have to be scared of him because you understand him and people like him. You live around him. You know these people. So you don't have to be scared. Darren Wilson said Mike Brown, that kid was the scariest person he ever saw in his life. Same thing with Tamir Rice. He's a 12-year-old boy. But if you're taught and you brought up in this culture of dehumanizing black people and viewing us as these non-human creatures, it's easy for you to pull a trigger. It's easy. It's simple. But if you knew these people, then you wouldn't. We wouldn't have these problems. I can write about other stuff like roses and poetry and flowers and trees. I wouldn't have to write about guns and drugs and violence and systemic racism and street harassment and white supremacy and poor education and food deserts and all of these other things that can be depressing, yet informative sometimes.
I think that brings up a good point from Anna. She says, how do you feel? Do you feel like you're a voice for these people? Is it ever a burden for you to feel like you're the one of the few people who can talk to this experience of living in an urban community that is poor, that is drug-ridden, where you've witnessed murders and countless atrocities? Is it ever a burden for you to feel like you have to be the voice for this community?
No, because I'm just one guy and I'm just one voice. Like I don't try to speak for every black person in the world. Like I don't. A lot of times we get caught up in this whole idea of it being one black voice. It's like, it used to be everybody listen to what Jesse Jackson say, and then it turned into everybody listen to what whoever the guy is now. I don't know. But like a lot of these people who had these platforms, they don't understand what it's like to be from where I'm from. And they say things that don't necessarily resonate with me. And I think I'm part of a collective of voices, and we all have different ways we see the world. Like some of the writers I work with in different cities, or even back home in Baltimore, where we come from similar backgrounds, but we see the world in a different way. We approach activism in a different way. And I'm thankful that all of us, we all get the opportunity to publish and to tell these stories the way the best way we can tell these stories. So I think I'm honored that I have the opportunity to speak, and I'm even more honored that I've had the opportunity to help other people get published and tell their stories too, because, just like the white people, Asian people, Latino, but it's a bunch of us, and, imagine what if everyone in this room had to agree on one meal tonight? Everyone in here, we got to agree on one meal.
Salmon?
And it can't be pizza. It definitely can't be salmon. But if we all had to agree, we had a joke at dinner because I hate salmon, but I eat it because of the nutrients. Well,
but it's so good.
But if we all had to agree on dinner tonight, it would probably be impossible. So how can I speak to, your issues and what you believe in and what you go through? It doesn't work like that. And it's like disrespectful to other people too to try to like be their voice. Like people speak for themselves, and, I try my best to consider that not just in the way I write, but in the way I help other people get published.
Well, coming from Baltimore, you have a really unique perspective on one of the biggest stories that has driven the Black Lives Matter movement, which is the Freddie Gray incident in Baltimore. And JC wonders, what was it like to have Baltimore at the center of a national discussion about race and police brutality, and what was it like to be there?
When I looking back at it, it was crazy because I was walking through the city and buildings was, on fire, and it was just like, for the people who knew Freddie Gray, Freddie Gray was like, had a reputation for being like a funny guy, like a jokester. I didn't know Freddie, but we know all of the same people. And he didn't have the reputation of being like a troublemaker or a person that would, he wasn't gonna fight anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like he was that silly guy that made everybody laugh. So I think that's where a lot of that anger came from. To get so much attention it kind of drained me because you couldn't walk around without bumping into a camera crew. It was just like, it became like, and then they over-reported. And then when the story went cold, they still over-reported. And even a year later, they still lying. Like they, as these cops were going to court, they were showing footage of what happened last year as if it was like what was going on in Baltimore to try to recreate that narrative. And it didn't work like that. So it was rough, But the beauty in it, was it gave a lot of communities who always ignored Freddie Gray's community a chance to actually walk through his neighborhood and see why everyone was so upset. And it created a lot of relationships that exist to this day. And I think that's the positive thing that came from it. A lot of people who wouldn't come through certain parts of Baltimore were starting to come through different parts of Baltimore, and they understood that, it's something here for me too. This is a part of our city, and we all need to try our best to continue to build on that. So I got love for that, and I was happy about that. And then a lot of the fake activists and fake like wanna be leaders, they got exposed. Like, they was trying to post up where like rallies were going on, and people were taking their little podiums and breaking their microphones and kicking them. And it's not here. We're not here for that. Like, we're not here for you to to promote. The only way the city will unify is if you buy my product. Is people was coming out there like that, and they was instantly getting exposed. But the people who came to show love were embraced, and they got love, and that was like a good thing.
Well, before I open it up to audience questions, I'm going to bring it back to the presidential election since we're all paying such close attention to it. One of the things that Donald Trump has said, and he said in the first presidential debate, is that Black and Latinos are living in a hell of some sort. And he recently wrote a piece called A Memo from Hell, referring to Trump's debate with Hillary Clinton. And he said that Trump's stereotypical Black and Latino hell is a world that only exists to people like Trump. What did you mean by this?
People who don't know anything outside of their own world. He's never been a part of anything that was bigger than himself. He lives inside his own, his own kookish reality. Like, that's just crazy, there's some Black people in some tough spots, but then there's some wealthy ones too, just like whites, just like Asians, just like anybody else. That was just like, it's like just a ridiculous generalization. Even as I watched that, I was like drinking a latte and getting a shoulder rub. I'm like, like, oh, this is hell. Like, okay, I'll take it.
All right, well, I'd like to open it up to the audience, and as usual, we'd like to have questions from both students and community members. So first off, let's open it up to a student question. You can just raise your hand and I will call on you. Yes, all the way in the back. Regarding Freddie Gray? So the question is, what's being done in Baltimore to heal those wounds?
So I will say, I've never had like any type of relationship with police officers in my whole entire life. They've always been like aliens to me. But if those cops weren't convicted, then I probably never would have met with the commissioner. He reached out to me to like talk about what can he, and this is not like, this is the guy that runs the show. This isn't like some pedestrian who runs some unit, District 2 or something. This is like the guy who oversees all of that. And he honestly opened up and asked, what can he do, or how can he help his cops better understand the communities, and how can he promote being a police officer as a reality to a lot of kids in the city. And I was able to connect him with people who specialize in police relations and community police relations that he doesn't know. And I think that's a step forward in helping those people understand each other. So that's one thing. As far as the rest of us in the activist community, we're working really, 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 really hard. So like I said, I try my best to create thinkers. I think if you can help create a generation of thinkers, then they can figure out how to switch these realities on their own. They won't need a nonprofit or a grant or somebody to babysit them into excellence, because they'll be too busy constructing their own plan of excellence. So I try to do that, and then there's other people who are able to use the attention that Baltimore has received to gain resources to push their programs forward. And there's a whole lot of other art movements that have been launched after that has been an outlet for a lot of kids who wouldn't really get a chance to be exposed to art under normal situations, and that community is growing too. So it's some positive things going on. You still have a lot of negativity. There's a lot of negative things going on, but we gotta keep working.
And I'll take this moment to remind the audience and those who are live streaming that you can also submit questions via Twitter by tweeting at Udell Agenda or using the hashtag Udell Agenda. So let's take a question from a community member. Yes, all the way over there.
After The Wire and the show that was presented, and you being an instructor,
So if I can rephrase just for our listening audience, The Wire was an incredibly powerful show created by David Simon that demonstrated some of the things that you've described in your own life. As a professor teaching millennials and reaching out to middle and high school students, are you finding that they are responding to that series and to your own work to write about their experiences in Baltimore?
So I created something called the Be More Writers Project, where I'm training high school students on how to document their own neighborhoods and be published on the website. So the 5 students that I'm working with right now have all been published on the website. They do video, they write, and then we have like a little podcast component too. And we pay them. So they get paid for the stories they create. So I'm doing that in my neighborhood where I grew up at. As far as in schools, so one of the universities I teach at is Johns Hopkins. And there I teach at the School of Education, and I teach a class called Context of the Urban Child. So these people aren't actually writers who can go out in the community and bring stories back, but they are working in a lot of schools in Baltimore City. And through taking their course, they're getting a better understanding of the realities that the students they're going to service actually live in. So we're able to approach them that way. And as far as myself, I've been working with my own organization, Penn Faulkner Writers in Schools, Hooks and Books, and like a couple of other places. I'm having a Gary Johnson moment. But collectively, we've donated close to 3,000 copies of these books to cities in Baltimore and like to schools all over Baltimore City. And I've personally went into every school that taught the class. I went in there myself and I taught like workshops and told stories and had an opportunity to build with the students so they can have a chance to actually see an author that came from their neighborhood.
Please.
Been the reaction to the students once they see you walk into that classroom and you do that workshop? Do you find them really lit up and say, hey, you know, some neighborhoods are pretty tough, but you know, there's a story here that needs to be told?
So how do the students react?
There's nothing more powerful. There's nothing more powerful. You know, when I was coming up, I grew up at the height of the semi-automatic era. You know, people were being thrown out of windows and beat down, and it was a very difficult time to grow up in. And when I was going across the street to my school, the teacher, she had like Mark Twain for us. There's no knock on Mark Twain, but Mark Twain didn't have like Air Jordans or girls or any of the things that we cared about growing up. He couldn't ride a dirt bike. Huckleberry Finn didn't do these things. You know, the only black person that was in that book was like a slave that like followed a kid around. So it was like, it's not strange that a lot of us didn't really take the reading coming up. But now you have a book full of stories that are, you know, giving a real perspective, not just that first person narrative, but some of those gems on where these actual things come from being presented to you in the book, and they eat it up. Like kids, and I hate to say this because Things Fall Apart is one of my favorite books. But they not reading Things Fall Apart, but they reading this book in a day. 200-page books, they reading them in a day. And a lot of teachers caught on, and they're fighting to get them. So the administration on North Avenue, it's probably gonna take them like 5 years to get it. So I'm not really in partnership with them. But the individual teachers, it already went viral throughout the school system, and we're making class visits. Last year it was every week. This year I'm traveling more, so it's like 2 times a month. But I still make it a point to go in every class that teaches the book, and it's like the most powerful thing in the world. It gives hope on a whole different level because, you know, students from Baltimore City rarely get a chance to interact with the authors of the books they read, let alone that author be from the city. And have a local platform that's popular and doing well. So that's like one of my biggest honors.
Do they look to you as a role model? Someone who do they tell you that they see you as someone that inspires them?
That's where the Baltimore Writers Project came from. The only reason why it's not bigger than what it is because, like, you know, I pay, like, I make money to pay them. I will not have them publish stories and not be paid. I want them to get used to working hard at creating good art, but then also collecting a check for it. I don't want my students to be like, excited about writing and not getting paid for it. I want them to work really, really hard and then be paid for their work. I'm going to create that culture of working hard and being paid for it, not like taking advantage of artists and artwork, but, actually being able to make off of it. So that's where the Baltimore Writers Project came from. And any teachers in here, if you're English, if you're teaching high school students, they love memoir. They love to write about themselves. They love to read stories about people from interesting places, and then they love even more when they get the assignment to tell their own story. That's one of the few things we all have in common. We all have a story, and we all deserve to tell it, and we should all be heard.
That's the truth. Even from my first grader in her class, they're doing family trees, talking about their backgrounds and who they are, to my college students. It's a powerful thing to be able to recognize your own identity and where you came from and why you are the way that you are. So I can see how it could be so powerful.
It's powerful. It's great. It's great. It's great.
There's a question all the way in the back. Thank you. If you had any role models, literary role models, when you were growing up.
As a kid, I didn't read a lot growing up. I didn't, the first book that really opened my mind up and said, and told me that I was missing out on the world was a book called The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Souljah. Because I didn't know you could write a book about a drug. I grew up in a drug family, but I didn't know anybody would write a book about it. I thought all books were about, I was very ignorant to a lot of things, so I didn't know. So like now, so I think Toni Morrison might be the best writer ever, that I ever read personally. I love Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm reading The Gambler right now. The Alchemist is my favorite book of all time, probably. As far as storytellers, it's not actually like a writer, but my biggest influence as a storyteller is the rapper Nas. I like James Baldwin like everybody else. Sarah Hepler is one of my favorite writers. I'm reading her book, Blackout, right now.
Was there a book in particular that changed you?
The Coldest Winter Ever was like the first, I read it and I was like, I really didn't know, because I jumped right from The Coldest Winter Ever to Richard Price reading Clockers and Lavish Life, and then before you know it, I'm reading the Beat Poets. You know what I mean? So it's like it lit the fire, and it started something, and it started something that I didn't know was there. That's why I feel like reading has the power to change anybody. And this is why so many different people can't communicate, because they're not sub-vocalized. We think in words, and we're not giving ourselves the luxury and the power and the words to actually break these barriers down. And that's the problem. Two people from two different cities can't even have a simple conversation. They can't communicate. They're not thinking.
You mentioned earlier, you hope to look around and see people walking around with a book. We don't see that on this campus or in a lot of other places. People are walking around looking at their phones.
Well, maybe a book on the phone. They can walk around with a book on the phone.
I even have my tablet out here. What is it? How can we, attention spans are so short, I think, now. How can we recreate that fascination with the written word when we have so many distractions?
I think, did you read the first chapter in this book? Can I read the first chapter? This is what you do for showing attention span. This is the first chapter. The firm will show it to you.
Is that all right?
Is that cool? Do you mind?
I'm cool.
First chapter, it's a page and a quarter.
Let's do it.
I saw bullets rip through the faces of adolescents. I saw mothers abandon their kids. I saw fathers go out for milk to never return. I saw kids turn into killers. Cops steal and grandparents raise infants around here. I saw kids slap spit out of adults. I saw the devil. I saw a dude shake dude's hands before whipping out his gun and making him put his hands up. We go through midlife crises at 15 around here. I saw friends kill friends. I saw friends kill friends and attend their wake. I saw teachers tell kids they die like their parents or siblings. What does hope look like? I saw shot dudes in wheelchairs be shot again while they sat in their wheelchairs. I saw shots that made bodies flip. I saw colostomy bags burst, guts spill, brains on the curb, brains on the wall, brains by the car, multiple contusions, limbs knocked off, faces rearranged, eyeballs and small intestines. I saw flesh sizzle like minute steaks. We all self-medicate around here. I saw murder after murder after murder. I've smelled murder. I saw bodies rot. I know hate. I saw barefoot families. I saw drug money by churches. I saw hoop dreams spark and fade. I saw all types of dreams spark and fade. I saw house raids. I saw families evicted. I saw AIDS spread. I saw thousands made and lost right in the middle of the place where cops enforce, terrorize, and collect. I saw it. I saw it all. So the chapters are short. So, and it's a trick. You know, it's like tricking you into learning. You're like, oh, I'm just going to do 2 chapters before I go to bed. And then you read it, and you're like, wait, chapter's only 2 pages? Before you know it, you did 20 chapters before you went to bed. And then Tuesday comes, and you've done the book. So it's things that we can do creatively to make people get excited or give them more patience in finishing books. One is do away with the 180-page chapters.
As an academic, that sounds difficult. Let's take a question from a student. Yes, right here.
I know you said that reading really sparked your interest for your passion for your creative side in terms of literature. At what point did you think to yourself that you wanted to go to school to further your education? And how did that alter your relationship with some of your family members and your friends?
So reading inspired you to go forward in this career, but I think, for those of you who haven't necessarily read his story, there were a couple of bumps in the road before you actually got to this point. How did you get here?
Yeah, so from early on, my older brother really pushed for me to go to college. He used to always he used to say this is all the way back, this is back in like 2000, 1999. He'd just say, yo, go to college, and take computers. That's what he used to say. He used to say, take computers, because the whole world's going to be using computers. And we'd be like, man, go ahead. He's like, nah, I'm telling you, I see it. The whole world is going to use computers, go to school for computers. So I said, okay, if he said it, I will listen to it. He tell me to go to school for computers, I'm going to school for computers. So I like that. I'm going to school for computers. So we had moved out, and we had a little spot, and he was hustling, and I was trying to become like that student that he thought I could be, and I was foolish enough to listen when he told me I could be good enough to make it into a school, because nobody in our family went to college. So I worked really hard at that, and I got accepted to a lot of schools, and as I started getting the letters, and I was trying to figure out where I was going to go, and he was proud of what I was doing. In the midst of all of this, he gets murdered. So when he got killed, that just took, it was a huge piece of me went down in the ground with him, and I wasn't thinking about college. I was just laying around the house in just a constant state of depression. Wasn't really coming outside, wasn't really talking to people. Somebody would ask me simple questions like, how are you or something, I would just snap. I was in a dark place, and then one of my good friends made me he's like, yo, you should go to college, and you should really, really take a stab at this. So I said, you know what? I got accepted to all these schools. I'm gonna give it a shot. And I went to this school in Baltimore called Loyola. And for people who don't know about East Baltimore is maybe the blackest city in the world. I never, no joke, I didn't really meet a white person in my age group until I turned 18, 19 years old, until I went to Loyola. So when I went there, it was culture shock. It was like, it was a super white campus. It's, people with acoustic guitars and all types of Birkenstock and hacky sack and all of these I wasn't used to it, and the whole assimilation piece wasn't really happening fast enough for me. And so I dropped out of school, and when I dropped out of school, I went through everything. Been through the streets, sold drugs, been shot. been beat down, beat other people down, jumped out of a moving car. I did all this Bruce Willis stuff, you know, and through that process and through that constant streak of trying to make money and not being happy with the money and where it was coming from, it set me on a path to righteousness. I had to learn. I come from a culture of, you know, if I love you, then I show you that love by just buying you stuff. So I was taught that love and money, that those two things went together. I'm sorry, ladies, you guys getting cheap dates tonight, but I was taught that love and money went together, and just going through that process and actually having a chance to make money and not die, I've learned that that's not where happiness came from. And then I started a journey on looking for that. And when I went to college, and I was reading actually 2 books. One book was called Fire in the Canebrake, about the last mass lynching in America. And in the process of me reading that book, another woman that I was cool with was like, yo, you reading now? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to do the college thing. I got like a book bag and, you know what I'm saying, all that. I took it serious. When I went back to college, I bought glasses. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I take these things serious. So she was like, yo, you would love this book. This sounds like your family. And she gave it to me, and it was the coldest winter ever. And I started reading it, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, this is like, I didn't know you can put these types of things in a book. And then from there, I strangely started meeting other people that read, and I got other titles, and I got other books, and I didn't know I was going to be a writer, but I did know that I loved history. I loved studying Reconstruction. I loved talking about some of the things that went on after the war, especially some of the things that black people did in the Reconstruction era in a positive way, like Benjamin Montgomery and Nate Shaw and all of these different people that started these companies and their businesses and who were able to excel in that time. It was just interesting to me. And then, as I became more of a reader and I started reading articles from the people that's supposed to be talking for me, a door opened up and a light just shined in, not in real life, but just like inside of my head. And I said, yo, there's a whole segment of this country that's missing, because the people who are telling these stories don't even know the people they're writing about. How you writing about poverty and being poor when you never use the oven to heat your house up? How, Sway? You know what I mean? It's like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you doing this? And you never had these types of situations or these realities, but you get the luxury of telling stories of people who stuck in these realities every day. I'm going to do my best to tell these stories in the most respectable way as possible. One, because I was in college and broke. And then two, I love reading the stories. I love telling stories. And it was like a match made in heaven. So my career as a writer has been, it's just been great. Like, I've been lucky and fortunate and happy.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
Hi, so on campus, both of us are members of the Black Student Union. So one of the things we have to do is create programs for students to be more politically aware. Now, on a predominantly white campus, that can be especially hard because we're targeting a small community, right? How do we connect with these students without feeding into the racial divide?
That's a great question. So we have a representative from the Black Student Union here. If I can throw on top of that a question that I get a lot from our white students is, how do we engage in these kinds of discussions without isolating certain groups of people? How do we have events like this? How do we bring people together? If I can paraphrase what you're saying. On a predominantly white campus, historically white campus.
So I care a lot about goals, setting goals and achieving them. And if it's something that you want, that you really, really want, you can do it. And I always think about when I was speaking to a class, a bunch of classes, but this has happened to me at Hopkins, this has happened to me at Harvard, happened to me all types of classes, where somebody will say, they'll say something like, I care about these people, I care about these issues, how can they help? But you got into one of the most prestigious universities in the world, right? You got in there, but you don't know how to do something simple like help the people who you're saying you want to help. So I think that, one, I think that you already smart enough to know to connect with the people who you should be connected with. I think when it comes to drawing other people in, I think the ones who should be a part of what you're doing should definitely come. I don't think you should work hard to engage people that don't want to be engaged, or to try to work with people who want to yell Black Lives Matter because it's popular. I don't think that's gonna get you that result, in my opinion. But what I would do is I would challenge the small group that you have to be more active and productive in promoting whatever that goal is. To the students who ask you what can they do, they can talk to them. They can talk to them. They can find, they run Black Lives, they run a Black Student Union. Go have a conversation with them and figure out how they can be a bigger voice in their own sections, in their own circles, in promoting some of those ideas. So I always look at it like that. I think, if I wanted to buy something, or if I wanted to have a certain type of life, then I'm going to strategically plan on making that life a reality. So when it comes to hard work and activism, if you don't have the same mentality, if people don't have the same mentality, then they don't really want it. Because if you want it, you can do it. You can do it.
I think that's been one of the most inspiring messages I've heard from you today. And one I try to instill in my students is, you all have the power to make change. You can make a difference. And I hope that conversations like these give you that confidence to do so. Before we give a big thank you to Dee Watkins for coming here, I want to make sure you know that the books are for sale out in the lobby. He has signed copies of the books. I want to mention that our next event here at Mitchell Hall will be, are the debates first? I'm trying to remember. We have Delaware debates on October 19th. We'll be having the gubernatorial and the House debate right here in this room. Tickets are required. You can go to delawaredebates.org to figure out how to obtain those tickets. And then our next speaker will be Governor Bob Ehrlich, the former governor of Maryland. So he will offer us a different perspective from what we've heard tonight. Please give Dee Watkins a big round of applause.